I'm Cy Wakeman. I'm the author of No Ego. Today I'm in Sioux City, which is where my career actually started. I'm here today in Sioux City, and I've been invited back to my hometown to speak to a wonderful group of women. I spoke today at the Siouxlands Women's Connect group, and they're all about helping women develop as leaders and helping men and women build inclusive workplaces. As I was presenting and I looked out in the audience, I made eye contact with so many women that played such a significant role in my own history, my own development. And as I was looking at each of these women, it reminded me the importance of mentoring. And many times we believe that mentoring is all about teaching, but what I have found from the women in my life that have mentored is that it's all about the self-reflecting. They didn't necessarily make sense of my world for me, but they held space for me to make sense of what was happening in my world and really pushed me to self-reflect. The way that we need to work as leaders is to understand the ego and move beyond the ego. And the way that you move beyond ego is understanding this human condition. And ego's a lot like a 2-year-old. If a 2-year-old has this clicker, does anybody want to tell me the worst way to get this clicker away from a 2-year-old? Grab it. The minute you come for it, it is all I have. In fact, I didn't know I wanted it this bad. I'm now attached. You can grab a 2-year-old across the stage with a clicker. In fact, when we are looking at 2-year-olds to see if they're developing appropriately, we do this to them. We give them a pen and then we try and take the pen. We want to see resistance. And then we check for something else. What's the best way to get this clicker away from a 2-year-old? Switch it out. Hand them something different. If you want this clicker away from a 2-year-old, hand them a water bottle. Hand them a pen. Don't hand them a pen. Hand them a straw, right? Because now when faced with these two things, a 2-year-old has a very special time where they can't do both at once. They have to drop the clicker to grab the straw. And then we let them get attached to that. If you want to know if it's a 2-year-old on track, you let them get attached to that, and then you go, or did you want the clicker? They go, I hate it when you do this. And then they have to drop the straw to grab the clicker. Does that make sense? The ego is like this. An ego, a person, can't self-reflect and be an ego at the same time. You can't vent and self-reflect at the same time. Okay? Venting's the ego's way of avoiding self-reflection. Self-reflection is the foundation of accountability, which is death to the ego. So if I'm working with you, I'm not going to use a traditional leadership method, which is let me sit here for an hour and give you feedback. Let me do, let me critique you. No, I'm going to bypass that. I'm going to ask you a question for self-reflection because you can't vent and self-reflect at the same time. The reason the question, what would great look like right now, worked is because while she was venting, I bypassed the ego and I got to the inner part of her brain, which is some of you call the mammal part of the brain. Some of you, it's like your most complex, it can collaborate, it can innovate, it can team, it can do all of these things at our highest level of self, but we can't if we're only operating in our frontal cortex. It doesn't work that way. So when I say to you, what could you do to help? You were venting, you have to drop the clicker to pick up the straw. No venting, reflecting, I got some answers, great, go do that. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about a piece of feedback that was disturbing to you and therefore you just dismissed it and threw it away. Go back to that piece of feedback, pick it back up and find 3 ways how it really is true. Let me know in the comments below what that opened up in your minds. If you guys are loving this content, here's what I want you to do. Tag a friend that you think needs to hear this in a comment below. You'll be glad that you did, and so will they.